just like in medicine, really, truly diagnose the individual before we help them with that prescription, right? Or the avenue or the path or the right way for them.
It was clear to me that not taking action is something I was going to regret. And even though it was a challenge, I started taking baby steps. And boy, there's nothing that fuels the human soul like purpose and courage and seeing that I'm better off. Welcome to Career Compass, mapping your future. Visit yourcareerrevolution.com today to get your free guide on the benefits of working with a career ownership coach. Welcome to Career Compass, the show dedicated to helping you map your future as you reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of our 10-episode season dedicated to the 10 steps to your ideal career. As you may know by now, I'm Tamara Loring with the Entrepreneur Source, and today, organizational psychologist and executive coach, Dr. Mike Smith, and I will be chatting about one of my favorite topics: why working with a career coach, a career ownership coach in particular, can help you explore what's possible, can help you explore and figure out what it will take to take that next step. Really help you gain clarity and muster up the courage to take meaningful action. Doc, do you quickly want to go ahead and say hello?
Yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode. And I'm really looking forward to this one, T. This is going to be a good one.
I agree. Because I think I never understood the power of coaching until I got to work with a coach myself and realized that, a coach really isn't there to tell you what to do. I know career ownership coaches, for instance, don't sell anything. They don't have an intended outcome, but they take you through a series of what I like to think of as thought exercises to really help you find clarity and direction. And we have such an honor because we're a 40-year-old company and we have a time-tested process. And actually, you know what? It's not even just a time-tested process. It's a patented process of education, awareness, and the discovery that our coaches get to use to help our seekers and our clients explore what's possible. And once you have clarity, of course, it's your own personal responsibility to take action of what you now know is going to be best for you. One of the favorite things I know we talk about in the book is, what's the problem with decisions? If we always knew that we could make a good or the right decision, we wouldn't fear making decisions. But most of us fear making a bad or a poor decision, something that we cannot recover from, right? So as a coach, we will help you explore what's possible and then give you the opportunity to take meaningful action. And actually, we take the decision-making process away from you and help you educate yourself so that you eventually can make an informed choice as opposed to worrying about making a bad or a poor decision. So if you are considering a change, I would encourage you to do the following. Visit careercompassshow.com and sign up. As a matter of fact, if you're listening to today's show, one of the things that we're going to do is give you a free copy of your very own Your Career Revolution book. So make sure that you check that out. Give us the information so that we know where to send it to. Doc, my question to you is, at some point in time, you saw so much value in coaching that you actually chose to become an executive coach. Why don't you tell us about the path that led you there and why you do what you do today?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, I just want to back up real quick to something you said earlier about, the career coaches there don't do any sales, right? And that's the same thing I do as an executive coach, right? Every time I meet with a potential client, it's never a sales pitch. It's always a serve pitch, right? How can I best serve you, right? And just really talking through the value that a coach can bring to the table. So what really started me down this journey is I actually had someone reach out to me for some help one time. This was, close to the end of my corporate journey. Several senior leaders within the company just came to me for advice, shut the door, and they just started asking me questions and kind of letting me know how they were feeling. And, as the safety manager, I kind of had my finger on the pulse of everyone. But what I quickly found was they really weren't interested in getting specific answers to their questions as much as they wanted someone to help them create the space where they could stop and think and work through things and have someone that could challenge them and help them to unpack questions or thoughts or become aware of blind spots, maybe biases, the things that were holding them back. So the more I was exposed to helping people through that lens, it just really fired something inside of me that, man, if I could do this full time, that would be totally awesome. So I think I kind of touched on this before. I started getting to the point where my corporate job just wasn't filling that need anymore, that internal passion. And so I came home and talked to my wife and asked her if she was cool if I stepped from the corporate job. And there you go. So it was really that, just seeing the value of how a coach can pour into others and the true ROI, right? Initially, it's an intangible ROI, but I think in a lot of aspects, that intangible ROI leads to a way bigger tangible ROI, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think, as you're talking, that is really the difference between the value a coach brings versus a consultant or an expert or a teacher or, so many of the other types of professions that are out there or the people that we look up as mentors. A coach really turns it inward, right? I think many times when people are unhappy, they are looking for the quick solution. Hey, what do you got that can fix me or help me or what have you? And I think the counterintuitive part is that as a coach, before we offer up any solutions, we take you on this journey of self discovery where maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable because how many people dream on a daily basis, like when they were a kid and failure was not an option, right? So, for many of us, we're just going through the motions and we've stopped dreaming. And as a coach, we pause that rat race for a second
Mm.
and say, what would your life look like if you were able to create it? And really to do some soul searching and some self reflection. I mean, we only get this one life. So let's imagine it or reimagine it in a way that gets us excited. And once we have that vision of what could be, that becomes our North Star. And only then does it make sense to start looking for solutions. So I think so many times people think the solution is what's going to make me happy and successful, as opposed to making sure that you have purpose, you have a primary aim, you understand what that is, and then finding the solution that's going to scratch that itch. And as a coach, I know that makes total sense to you, right? Because it's just what we do. But it's so interesting because I think most of the world doesn't function from that paradigm.
Right, and, it goes back to that old saying, right? I'm sure that most of us have heard it, right? But if you give someone a fish, they'll be good for that meal. If you teach them to fish, then they'll be good for a lifetime, right? So that's really what coaching is, right? We're not giving them the solution. We're teaching them and helping them to uncover, discover, unpack, and become aware of those things, but then also give them the tools to do that again and again. So it becomes kind of like a behavior.
You're absolutely right, and I could see some people saying because I remember thinking the same. It's like, well, if I already knew what to do, I would be doing it. So how can I trust that I have the answer within myself, right? I mean, I just don't feel that smart, or I don't feel that competent, because so many people do question their identity. In our book, we talk about something called battered career syndrome, where people went to school, pursued their career, maybe climbed the corporate ladder, and then, due to no fault of their own, maybe a downsizing, a right sizing, I sometimes call it capsizing, they question their identity, right? So many times when we speak to individuals, they just don't know what the future can bring, but they realize that it's the definition of insanity trying to find another job, or even if they find another job, it's at a fraction of what they were accustomed to making. So it just something seems off, but they just don't know how to solve for it. So I don't blame people for looking outside of themselves first, thinking like the solution must be out there. But what I love about our methodology, like I said before, it's the series of thought exercises to really give you permission to dream a little bit and not worry about failure. And once you have a vision for something that can get you excited, to have somebody who can support you. I mean, one of the things I guess, even when I started dreaming, I didn't have the courage to take action. And one of the things I love that we talk about in the book is saying if how to's were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy, right? Brian Clemmer actually is the author of that book. And it made me realize the power of a coach. Somebody you can absolutely trust, somebody who has no ulterior motives other than making you a better version of yourself and setting you up for success. And that often means that they are going to take you out of your comfort zone because if you already knew what you wanted, you wouldn't need them, right? So recognizing that it's their job to make you feel uncomfortable, but it's for your betterment and it's for you. And then they also get to be your dream champion. I am so thankful and so grateful for the champions or the coaches in my life because I didn't have the courage. But I could see that they believed, sometimes more than I did, in what my potential was. And thankfully, they would have these really hard conversations. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes there were tears involved. But I recognized that they're doing it for me. And I realized that just because I was scared didn't mean that it wasn't a worthwhile pursuit. I think the Duke University basketball player, she always, coach, she always says, don't wish life were easier, learn how to do hard things better, right? And so that gave me the courage to just take one bold step. And once you do once and you realize that you're better for it, you have the courage to take the second step and the third step, and then the compound effect takes over. So I said a whole bunch there, but I'm sure you'd love to unpack some of what I just spoke about.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the fundamental key issues to remember is, and I think we can all relate to this when we go through the daily ops tempo and the daily grind of our life. So often we just continue on the path we're on, and it's because we've been shaped and influenced by, again, our internal biases, our environment, our previous experiences, the journey, the point where we're at, what other people have said to us. So all these external factors shape us internally, right? That's kind of like who we are. That's the way we're wired, right? But emotion clouds judgment, right? And one of the things that a coach is really good about doing, a career coach, executive coach, physical coach, is kind of helping you to separate temporarily that emotion from logical, critical thinking and really help you unpack and discover some of those things from just sort of a neutral position without that sometimes undue, unnecessary influence that sneaks up through our subconscious that does squash us a lot of times. So when you have someone that can create the space in the landscape of, okay, here's a blank canvas, let's paint, right? What picture do you want to imagine? What picture, what masterpiece do you want to create? And then have someone whose sole job it is to partner hip to hip with you and walk you down that path, right? To help you see the internal self-imposed barriers or obstacles or things that you may still be letting affect you that someone else said or someone else told you that totally aren't true, right? Then you go through that validation process. And you mentioned some of the tools that coaches use. Like I know for you all, the career coaches, the tools and assessments and exercises that you use, they're very intentional and they're created specifically for the work that you do, right? So it's not like as coaches, we're just out there just giving out assessments and, saying, all right, you took an assessment. Like the data that comes from the specific exercises and tools we do are directly related to the journey of the client. So there's just so much power overall in a coach, and the processes, like you said, are tried and true. I mean, you all been doing this for a long time and you've got the data to back up and support what you're saying. But again, at the end of the day, it truly is all about like the client. And a coach will be the first one to tell you, right? A coaching journey, when I work with an executive, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. Zero, like nada. It's all about the client. And that's where my focus is. That's where my energy is. That's where my intention is, my attention, all of it. It goes towards the client and helping them and specifically what they want, not what I want for them, what they want for their life.
Oh gosh, exactly right. So it's a combination, right? It's not just the coaching relationship, but it's the proven methodology that we here at the Entrepreneur Source are able to offer up. That literally, you're absolutely right, has helped at this point in time. I think if it's not tens of thousands of people, it may even be hundreds of thousands of people going through this bot exercise. We have this as I mentioned, patented process that provides education, that creates awareness, that leads to discovery, right? Where you're really able to figure out your primary aim in life, have this North Star, this vision that you want to work towards, and then being able to really learn and compare and contrast the wide range of career paths because one size doesn't fit all. And what's right for you, Doc, may not be right for me, right? So as a coach, I'm not going to prescribe what has worked for me for you, but I explore with you what the pros and the cons are. And I have you get to a point where you convince me based on the dream you told me you wanted, how this is going to get you there. And I just get to be an extra set of eyes and ears. And like I said, where I get to challenge people, right? Because I've yet to meet a person who says, oh gosh, I'm not open to possibilities. I don't want to do it. But what happens is when you start challenging people, and I know this happened to me also, right? Was when I started looking at things that I hadn't done before, I started to close down and I started to resist or reject it. But had you asked me if I had an open mind, I would absolutely have said 100%. I'm possibilities driven and I have an open mind. But it's interesting when you haven't done it before, you're like, yeah, but that's not going to work here. And this is not going to work for me. I mean, specifically, I can give you an example of, when I knew that my career, I was a hospitality major. And even though my parents warned me, saying, like, are you sure? You understand hospitality is a 24/7 type of ordeal, right? You work when other people are having fun. You work on holidays and all that. And I said, absolutely, absolutely, I want it. And then until I experienced it, and I'm like, man, they're right. I have to give up Thanksgivings. I have to give up holidays. I have to give up weekends. I have to work nights. I don't know that I want to do this unless I have some equity in it. And then my parents started saying, well, then do something for yourself. And I felt like, but what am I going to do? I'm not an entrepreneur. So I had already labeled that I'm not an entrepreneur. Why did I do that? Who told me that I wasn't an entrepreneur? It was just something that I had made up and I started believing. So when somebody said, well, no, you too can be an entrepreneur, I'm like, but I'm not a Richard Branson. I am not Warren Buffett, right? It's like, well, are those the only two entrepreneurs on the planet today? Right. So, understanding and a coach can really help challenge you some of these things, these stories that we're telling ourselves, and we decide that they're true. They're not necessarily true. And I remember even once my mind was open, right? And I realized, like, okay, wait a minute. Entrepreneurs come in different shapes and sizes, right? Like, I don't need to be that maverick, but that doesn't mean that I cannot be a business owner. Well, that already started empowering me because now I started having hope, right? There was maybe a pathway. And then when I started looking at the different types of businesses, right? Independent businesses versus franchise businesses, again, I had to catch myself, or actually my coach caught that I had these biases and these stories again that I was telling myself. It's like, well, an independent business is too risky, or, I don't know whether it's going to work in a marketplace. And franchising, coming from the hospitality industry, I'm like, I don't want to be part of anything that has to do with fast food and French fries. But I lacked the education. I was not aware of all the different business formats, all the different franchise formats, all the different industries. And, it's really like my coach has been able to change my worldview. And now in hindsight, I so realized that I had a closed mind, even though my perception was that I had an open mind. And the one last thing that I think you spoke about was, even once I had the information and even as this transformation occurred, I also recognized that if it wasn't for my coach, who sometimes gave me a gentle nudge or sometimes even a hard push, saying things like, well, do you know what? If nothing changes, nothing will change. So apparently you're not as dissatisfied with your current situation because you're not taking action. It's like, no, I want to take action, but I realized I really had to muster up the courage. And it goes back to what I said right in the beginning. Why was I fearful to take action? Because I was afraid to make a bad or a wrong decision, something that would put me in a worse situation or something that I couldn't recover from. But man, the right type of education is so empowering and so eye-opening. And even though it takes courage to take that step, it was clear to me that not taking action is something I was going to regret. And even though it was a challenge, I started taking baby steps, and Boy, there's nothing that fuels the human soul like purpose and courage and seeing that I'm better off. And so then it just becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. So that is the power of coaching.
Yep. Yeah. And if I could, I would just like to throw two things on there real quick to kind of summarize at a high level what coaching is to me. And I think to you, because we've had this discussion before. So the first thing, and you mentioned that you used the word, right? Prescription, right? So with the assessments and the process and the philosophy and the mindset, right? Just like in medicine, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice, right? That's why we use the processes and the tools and the assessments that we do, right? Really, truly diagnose the individual before we help them with that prescription, right? Or the avenue or the path or the right way for them. And then the second thing, and I love this, my speaking mentor was mentored by Bill Gove, who's the father of professional speaking. And he has a famous quote that he used to share with all speakers. And I think it applies to coaches as well, right? But he used to say about speaking as a professional speaker, you're responsible to your audience, not for your audience. So as a coach, we're 100% responsible to our clients, but not for them. So what does being responsible for them means? Oh, I hope they like what I'm saying. I hope
Mm.
they pick up on what I'm throwing down. I hope they think I'm an awesome coach, right? That's trying to be responsible for. I hope they learn from what I give them. But look at the small shift, right? Being responsible to the client means I'm prepared, I'm invested, I'm present, I'm engaged, I'm actively creating the space, I'm actively listening, I'm there for them, I'm challenging, I'm nudging, I'm preparing, I'm doing my homework, I'm debriefing assessments. That's being responsible to your client versus for them. And if you go down that path, which all of your career coaches do, I know that because I've talked to them, by default, you will see positive and plus end gains at the end of the journey. There's just no other outcome, right? And to your point, then it's up to the person to make the decision. But man, being responsible to someone is so powerful and gives them everything they need to then make that decision, create that masterpiece, and paint that amazing artwork.
Oh, that is so huge. I mean, absolutely. Anybody who has not had the benefit of working with a coach, I would say, I know I would have missed out, and I can't even imagine what my life would be like today had I not had the opportunity. And it is so, so powerful. And I think it's such a respectful way of dealing with another human being too, right? Because I said in the beginning, initially when somebody is dissatisfied, they're looking for solutions outside of themselves. But coaching really respects and honor you and says, no, I trust that you have the answer within you. You may have to dig deep. You may have to do some soul searching. But as adults, at the end of the day, isn't that what we're running away from? We don't want other people to tell us what to do. We want to own our own life. We want to have the freedom and the control. And yet, so many times we outsource it. Right. And we acquiesce. And it's like, what do you think I should do? And as a coach, you're absolutely right. We cannot do it for someone. Right. So say that again. I love the way you phrased what a coach does and doesn't do.
So we're not responsible for our clients, but we're responsible to them.
Love that. Love that. So, anybody listening to the show today, if you feel like you could benefit from somebody who could be a sounding board, somebody who's going to challenge you to greatness, I would absolutely encourage you once again, go to Career Compass and fill out the information so that we can send you one of these books. In these books, you'll find assessments like the POD assessment, the possibilities, options, and dream assessment, the ILWE assessment. That is an exercise to help you really think about your goals, your needs, your expectations as it relates to income, lifestyle, longer term wealth, and equity. Absolutely anybody could benefit from reading this book, listening to the Audible, listening to some of the podcasts as you're listening to right now. But above and beyond that, remember what I said. If how to's were enough, we'd all be skinny, rich, and happy. I know that for me, just attending a seminar or just reading a book didn't give me that kick in the butt that I needed, that accountability partner who looked me in the face and said, T, if nothing changes, nothing changes. You've got the information. Why are you not taking action? And then realizing that somebody may actually believe in my potential more than I do myself. Just because I'm scared doesn't mean I'm broken. But man, I know that I needed that individual, and forever grateful because my worldview has forever changed. I feel like I live in a world of abundant possibilities. One thing I always joke about is saying, and nowadays I just need to be careful not to suffer from SOS, shiny object syndrome, because there's so many things I possibly could be doing. I just need to focus on what's going to be right for me and my family this year, next year, maybe the next 5 years. But it's not because there's a lack of opportunity out there. There is so much that I could do. I feel like we've never lived in better times. So if you too feel like you could benefit from that, I would encourage you, check us out, get the book, and ask for a coach. We will do that at no cost, no obligation to you. I know it's going to sound too good to be true, but we've been doing it for over 40 years and we have helped tens of thousands of individuals. Dr. Mike, I'm going to give you the final word for today.
So I would just say that, invest in yourself, right? Bet on yourself, right? You are your most valuable asset and resource, and you are your own brand. So just have the courage to just even take the initial step and go to the website and just seek, just explore. Because at the end of the day, I think you'll find with the right people for the right reason in your corner, you'll become unstoppable and you'll get clarity and alignment and hope.
Agreed. Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go to yourcareerrevolution.com and request your free guide to the benefits of working with a career ownership coach. Thank you so much for listening.